Legislative Day 9, Senate roll call for Friday, January 24th, 2025. Anderson?
Here.
Barlow?
Present.
Boner?
Here.
Brennan?
Here.
Case?
Present.
Cooper?
Here.
Crago?
Here.
Crum?
Here.
Dockstetter?
Here.
Driscoll?
Excuse.
Excused. French?
Here.
Guru?
Here.
Hicks?
Here.
Hutchings?
Here.
Ide? Ide?
Here.
Jones?
Here.
Cole?
Present.
Landon? Larson? McEwen?
Here.
Nethercott? Olson? Pappas?
Here.
Pearson? Rothfuss?
Here.
Salazar?
Here.
Schuler? Scott?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Steinmetz? Larson?
Here.
Olson?
Here.
President Beitman?
Here.
Brennan?
Excused.
Excused. Mr. President, 29 present, 2 excused.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. Prayer by Reverend Richard Gilbert.
I hope you noticed that this young lady has fast feet, helping hands, a contagious smile, and when I asked her if she would be willing to share prayer with me, she was nodding her head yes before I ever had the question asked. So I would like to have prayer shared with Deanna, if that's all right with you. Any objections? Let us pray. Purposeful God of variety and value, you have created us to sound as strings in a piano, sounding both dissonance and harmony. When dissonance is necessary, enable us to be thoughtful and kind, and not defensive nor destructive. When discord is required to create and achieve accord, may we be thoughtful and truthful.
When harmony is achieved, enable us to be humble and grateful, and to guarantee well-being for people and creation. When harmony is accomplished, may we be pleasant and polite. Enduring God, you have placed us in a world of vast varieties, some of value and benefit, and some of hurt and harm. Through the gift and presence of your Holy Spirit, may we discern the difference between hurt and help and be able to endorse, develop, and transmit values that endure and enhance quality life.
Like strings in a piano, may truth sound forth and cause harmonious legislation to flow from this chamber for the well-being of Wyoming and your whole creation.
Gracious God, we remain grateful for our life, our liberties in these United States, our opportunities every day. Enable us to be harmonious, helpful, honorable, and we will always give you our gratitude.
In the name of the one who said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." And may we add a beatitude. Blessed are those who create harmony, for they shall be called the singers of God. Amen.
Amen.
Senator, I will lead us in praise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much.
So Reverend Gilbert, thank you for always being here with us throughout the years and offering your prayers for us. Always great prayers, and this morning's was probably the best yet. Thank you, Deanna. That was wonderful. So we have a token of our appreciation to you, Reverend, for being there for us this week. Thank you, and we hope you're not a stranger and keep coming back and joining us. So let's give the Reverend a good round of applause. Senator Boner,
Thank you, Mr. President. May I have privilege of the floor?
floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have special guests from our local governments, as I'm sure we're here today, but I'd like to introduce a town councilman from the town of Evansville. Greg Flustvag is in the back here. He's doing good work on behalf of one of our municipalities in Trona County. So I'd like you to join me in welcoming him to the Senate.
Welcome to the Senate. I have a privilege of the floor. I'll take for myself here. I heard a rumor that our IT guy, Mr. Bateman, from Sheridan, is going to be turning 30 years old here. Was it tomorrow? Tomorrow? So warm up those pipes. Senator Barley, you want to lead us in a little happy birthday to our good IT guy. He keeps our machines running on time. So hit it. I will surely have a virus on my computer now after that one. But hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. All right. Reading and correction, approval of journal. Will the reading clerk please read the journal committee report?
Mr. President, your journal committee reports that the journal of January 23, 2025 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Crum, chairman.
Are there any objections? There being none, the report is adopted. Chairman Crum, you're doing a fine job. Okay, we have no doctor of the day. Today in history, in 1984, the Apple Macintosh computer goes on sale. Quote of the day, Fridays are for focusing, finishing, and celebrating the week's successes. Anonymous, I guess. There's no name there, so whoever it is, there's your quote. It's the last day for our very own Senate student Paige, Deanna Davis, a senior at South High here in Sheridan. Deanna? Oh, you're busy. She's working. South in Cheyenne. Did I say Sheridan? A little bias there. Oh, Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, privilege of the floor.
The floor is yours.
When you brought the Apple Macintosh computer in 1984, and I'm old enough to remember those because I bought one and it had a 2 megabyte hard drive. It was the best thing going out. So,
Yep. Here's the little floppy disks. Deanna, I'd like to thank you from all of us for all the work you've done, your smile, your great attitude, your hard work. We're going to miss you a lot. You did great. We loved having you here in the Senate. We hope that you'll remember these days fondly as you get older, and through your endeavors, we wish you the best of luck to your future endeavors. I know, speaking for my behalf, if you ever need a letter of recommendation, I'd be happy to give it to you. You're a great kid. You have a bright future ahead of you. Let's give Deanna a round of applause and offer her a chance to speak.
Okay, thank you, President Beitman. All right, Even though I give speeches every single weekend, this is definitely the most distinguished group that I've ever had the opportunity to speak in front of. Normally, my audience is made up of pink-haired teenagers at speech and debate tournaments, but I digress. So, thank you to all the amazing staff and all the senators for your patience, grace, and professionalism over the last 2 weeks. Before coming here, I was convinced that I knew almost everything about the political process. Between Girls Nation, We the People, and being an election judge, I thought I was practically ready to run for office. But being here has opened my eyes to how hard our elected officials and the staff work to make our state truly amazing. Over the last 2 weeks, I've filed hundreds of bills, passed out tons of notes, drank more than my fair share of Diet Dr. Pepper, and got lost more times than I'd like to admit. But I wouldn't have wanted to spend the last 2 weeks doing anything else. In a few months, I'll be headed to Washington, D.C. to participate in the United States Senate Youth Program. Don't worry, I'll make sure to tell Senator Barrasso and Senator Lummis about Senator Scott's unique filing system. The biggest thing this opportunity has made me excited for is going to the University of Wyoming this fall. Go Pokes! Where I plan on studying political science and communications before going to law school and hopefully one day getting the opportunity to serve the people of this great state. So once again, I would like to thank the amazing Senate staff, especially the Chief Clerk Ellen, fellow pages Sue and Lori, the Sergeant of Arms Dick, the doorman/breakfast connoisseur Ron, and all the senators for this amazing opportunity. I hope the rest of the session continues to be successful as you shape the future of this great state. God bless all of you, and God bless the state of Wyoming.
I will just add, Deanna, you set the bar really high for the student pages for the rest of the session, so I feel sorry for those kids. Thank you. That was a great speech. Good job. Come back and visit.
Oh, I will.
All right, one more round of applause. Man, I hate saying goodbye. Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but Senator Barlow started a cover band. It's called Blanket. There's your dad joke of the day. Okay, let's get to work. Introduction, reading, and reference of business. Senate File 168, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 168, Budget Reserve Account Repeal, sponsored by Senator Hicks.
Senate File 168 is assigned to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Senate File 161, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 161, Residential Property Acquisition Value, sponsored by Senator McEwen.
Senate File 161 is assigned to Committee Number 3, Revenue. Senate File 123, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 123, School Finance Competitive Grants for Crossing Guards, sponsored by Senator Brennan.
Senate File 123 is assigned to Committee Number 4, Education. Senate File 162.
Senate File 162, Education Block Grant Model Amendment, sponsored by Senator Scott.
Senate File 162 is assigned to Committee Number 4, Education. Senate File 103.
Senate File 103, Terminating and Defunding Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz.
Senate File 103 is assigned to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. Senate File 145.
Senate File 145, Local Governments, Investments in Equity, sponsored by Senator Nethercott.
Senate File 145 is assigned to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate File 146.
Senate File 146, Consumer Rental Purchase Agreement Act amendments, sponsored by Senator Boner.
Senate File 146, assigned to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Senate Joint Resolution 7.
Senate Joint Resolution 7, NCSL 50th Anniversary, sponsored by Senator Pappas.
Senate Joint Resolution 7 is assigned to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Senate File 92.
Senate File 92, Make Carbon Dioxide Great Again, No Net Zero, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz.
Senate File 92 is assigned to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Senate File 135, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 135, Defense of State Banking 1, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss.
Senate File 135 is assigned to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Senate File 143.
Senate File 143, Public Monies, Deposits in Credit Unions, sponsored by Senator Nethercott.
Senate File 143 is assigned to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Senate File 130.
Senate File 130, Emergency Assistance Immunity, Mental Health Services, sponsored by Senator Rothfuss.
Senate File 130 is assigned to Committee Number 10, Labor. Senate File 147, first reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 147, Service Dogs Training and Crimes, sponsored by Senator Hutchings.
Senate File 147 is assigned to Committee Number 10, Labor. All right. Bills on second reading. Okay. Senate File 20, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 20, Oil and Gas Bonding Options and Bonding Pools.
Senate File 20 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 42, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 42, Resort Hotel Liquor Licenses.
Senate File 42 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 46, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 46, Water and Sewer Districts Bid Requirements.
Senate File 46 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 73.
Senate File 73, Charter School Funding Amendments.
Oops, I went out of order there. Senate File 73 having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 60, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 60, Sales Tax Distribution Rates, sponsored by Senator French.
There is an amendment. Will the reading clerk read in the amendment?
Senate File 60, second reading amendment number 1, page 2, line 6, delete.
Amendment sponsor is Senator Hicks. Somebody find Senator Hicks. Senator Hicks, we're on second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 60. It's got your name on
Mr.
it.
President, I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 60 when asked for your favorable consideration. Yesterday, I rose in opposition to this bill because of the change in the distribution between the state and the counties as far as the sales distribution. Given that a little more contemplation and had a little bit of an epiphany last night, Mr. Chairman. I've been down here a long time, and I went through all those other sources of funds that we currently, with severance taxes, mineral taxes, lottery, all of that goes to the county. One thing that's always bothered me a little bit about being down here is the local government distributions. And that's ranged anywhere from 105 million to 150 million in my time down here. Where I'm going with this is every budget cycle, that becomes a political football. And we make those counties and those cities come down here and grovel and lobby for those local government distributions. And that process has always bothered me a little bit. And knowing the fact that this body and our colleagues down at the other end of the building are most likely, we're going to prognosticate pass a number of bills this session that's going to have fiscal impacts on the counties and those cities, and these sales tax are distributed back on proportional population. It just seems to me that where we're going and what we've done in the past, that this may be a better route to help fund those local cities and towns and counties, because it's a reassured, continuous form that they can count on. And when you look at our revenue coming into the state of Wyoming and you look over the last decade, the one thing that we've seen pretty consistent is just slight increases in sales and use taxes every year versus mineral severance taxes, investment returns, all of that's volatile. So I think this provides a little bit of stability for those cities and towns and counties, that they have some reassurances of what that revenue is and the likelihood that it might be slightly inflation-proof over time. So it makes sense to me to split these on a 50-50 basis. Now, I will tell you, there's one circumstance out here that may have a potential negative consequence. Not negative from the standpoint that it's a diminishment, but with the Industrial Siting Act, the way we currently construct that, we give 2.75% of the cost of the materials for those back to those impacted communities. If we split the 50-50, it will have a little bit of an impact on that, because you have to take some of these sales tax receipts that weren't related to the materials for that industrial siding and offset that. Other than that, those particular circumstances, it's really just a straight 50-50 distribution. Under industrial siding, they're still going to get their 50% distribution, but those industrial siding fees will have to be made up of some of those sales taxes from someplace else. So, Mr. Chairman, that's what the amendment does. Stand for any questions.
Any discussion? Senator French, for your first time.
Just a comment, Mr. President. I fully support this amendment. I think it's a much fairer system of distribution, so I encourage my colleagues to support this.
Thank you. Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to ask from the sponsor of the amendment how much this would decrease our general fund.
Okay. Anybody else for their first time before we go back to the sponsor? Senator Salazar was up first, and then we'll go to Senator I.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I guess I would just like some clarification or a feel-good that what will this amendment do to, if anything, to our real small communities like Pavilion or Du Bois. I want to make sure that the impact satisfies them as well as some of the larger communities. Thank you.
Senator I, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for this amendment. I commend the good senator from Baggs. I think that, the 50-50 split really was where it should be. It's a good steady flow. The counties knowing what they're going to get. And I'm all for this amendment, so on and for it.
Okay. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I am for this concept, but I think it's premature for us to vote for it right now. And the reason I think that is because the good senator who sponsored it hits on one of the key points, which is the direct distribution. We have an incredibly complicated way of distributing funds that includes our sales and use tax, the direct distribution. Counties are looking to funding through property tax. This goes from being a relatively small tweak and a bump without anyone necessarily discussing cutting the direct distribution to now the idea of, well, this is in lieu of the direct distribution. The direct distribution is balanced in a way that it does very specifically provide additional funding to smaller communities uniquely, right? There's a certain aspect of the direct distribution, a portion of it which is set aside, and then a certain number of thousands of dollars goes to every city, town, and county, and a certain number of thousands of dollars goes baseline to every county, and then you start piling on based on a complicated Madden formula after that. This is big dollars. We don't even have an estimate of what the big dollars are right now, but this is a huge amount of money that would otherwise be going to the general fund. I don't know how much right now. I was trying to dig it up really, really quickly before I stood up. I did not get it yet. Looks like but regrettably, the sponsor of it's going to speak for a second time and give us those numbers. This is an interim study, is what this amendment is. This is a full, give it to a committee, assign the topic, contemplate better, more reliable distributions of funds to communities. And then this ends up being a result with all of the appropriate changes, including what would be required for amendments to industrial siting, Mr. President. So from a policy standpoint, I support this, but I can't support the amendment at this time because it is a big, big, big deal that needs a lot of heavy lifting before we support something like that, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Landon for your first time.
Mr. President, thank you. I found myself thinking, that this took a good bill and made it maybe not as good a bill. I just think, it's going to sound like a broken record, and I apologize if it does, but I'm going to stand up again and I'm going to caution the body. Pretty soon, we're not going to know or not going to have any balance in a general fund when we come down here. I think it's okay to stop for just a moment, let some of the funds flow into the general fund so we can get a look at it. We've got a lot of things to be concerned with here in Wyoming, and we've been very good to the cities, towns, and counties, and we can pass that right on through. But if it's distributed before we even get to look at it, we may come down here in a couple of years, Mr. President, there won't be anything in the general fund. I just think we should exercise some real caution here. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I think this actually, on and for the amendment, this kind of balances the scales. We've been talking about a lot of hits that are going to happen to local government, a lot. Of course, it's that food tax thing that never goes away that I've heard a long time ago. And I think this is a step forward that really has to be part of the equation when we talk about property tax reform. Frankly, this is the other side of the balance. And I think that's why it's a good thing to do, like it or not. We always are doing the direct distribution. And this is a way of having some certainty in how we do it. And certainly it does do a lot of things, that for sure. And maybe we could get more information on the next reading on that, and I look forward to it, but I stand for this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cole. Ayes and nays have been called. And anybody else for their first time? Oh, yep, Senator Dockstader for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're on second reading here. We've got time to get some more information. This isn't, I think I heard three bigs, big deal. But I think what we got to do here is take a look at what we're doing for our locals on this one. It's a second reading. We can move it through with the ayes and nays, and the sponsor can come back and provide us a little more information. We've got a little more time to get this, but I'll be an eye on this one. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else for their first time before we go to the second time? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Certainly, there's a lot of discussion that could be had about this particular amendment. I think if my simple math is correct, it's about $190 million to average over the next 3 years just based on the fiscal note that we had on the bill. So $190 million difference, I believe, would flow toward local government, if I understand it, which means $190 million less per year would flow to the state. If that's incorrect, I certainly want the sponsor to correct me, but that's the ballpark, at least with my chicken scratch over here. I do think it's a worthy discussion to have, but I will go back to a comment that a colleague had. Our direct distribution, there are funds that go to places that have no sales tax. No sales tax. So if you're one of those small communities that does not have sales tax, does not have, even a convenience store, right now they're being supported by direct distribution. So even if we did this, we're probably still going to have something else for those hardship type communities and potentially counties too that just don't generate that much revenue. So I don't disagree conceptually, but I think there's a lot more to be done with this. This is an interim, and this is not maybe just a committee interim. This is a task force of bringing in our local governments and saying, okay, what makes sense? How can we do this? How can we make our entire tax system more productive for you and for the state of Wyoming? So I'm not going to be for this amendment at this time. I understand the concept. I think it needs more work, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Boner for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for the amendment, as we have these discussions, not just about local distributions, but backfills, I think this does have to be part of the discussion. I'm increasingly skeptical of any time we come down here, K through 12 funding being the most egregious example, but also the local distribution model where we come down here, come up with some equation that's supposed to take care of every last municipality and county in this state. It's always going to be less than perfect. I'd rather look at options such as this, which empower our local elected officials instead of micromanaging them. So I agree that we have to do our homework. I'm not necessarily convinced that we have to have a task force or a whole interim to do that. I've seen some pretty quick work done around here when it comes to various impacts on various communities, whether it be increases, decreases in sales tax, local distribution, property tax, whatever the case may be. So for this amendment for now, looks like the rough math from my colleague from Campbell County matches up with a lot of other numbers that we've been talking about around here. So I think that we might be onto something here, and we'll be voting for this amendment for today.
Thank you. Anybody else for their first time? Anybody else for their second time before the sponsor of the amendment? Anybody else for their second time? Okay, back to you, Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, to answer some of the questions, first let me start with the local distributions. And for us that have been here a long time, every 2 years it's a giant battle down here. Nobody likes the formula. Everybody looks and they say, what's my town and what my county get? Why are these getting that? And it's a battle. In fact, we have a formula, and then we've modified the formula. We've changed the hardship formula. So it's just a constant battle as to what we do with that. And so, and that's based on a very complicated formula. Sales tax distributions under our currently statutory construct is based on population. So let's talk about those little towns as somebody that represents more small towns than anybody in the state of Wyoming. I've got a couple of towns that have one little bitty business in places like Medicine Bow, Wyoming, or Point of Rocks, or Encampment. This is based on population strictly. So whatever that population is, that's how sales taxes are currently distributed. Nothing changes on that. And so that just goes right out to those cities and towns and counties based on their population. That's the current distribution, split between counties and cities on an equal basis. As far as the fiscal note, so I'll tell you, last year in 2024, the state of Wyoming collected $944 million in sales and use taxes around the state of Wyoming. And so under the bill that we have now, and under the amendment on the bill that we passed yesterday, what that effectively did was increase those local government distributions for the sales tax of $38,600,000 or $600,000, which raised the total amount for the cities and towns and counties to $328.6 million. That's what the bill did. What this does, the differential, to get to my colleague from Campbell County, his numbers is pretty accurate if you add what the bill already did. But what this amendment does is it takes that 477 million, that's 50-50, right? Total, 944 million. We cut that in half. If we use 2024 as an example, that would put 477 million back to cities, towns, and counties. That adds onto what's already into the bill as $149 million. Pretty close to that $150 million of local government distributions that's, I think, in the current and the last couple of budgets. So the total amount, 477, you pass this amendment, it increases the amount above and beyond the bill by another $149 million. Steady, consistent supply of revenue to your cities, towns, and counties. And so that's what the bill does, Mr. Chairman. Those are the numbers as based on the 2024 tax revenues that we received for sales and use taxes. I hope that provides for clarification and ask for an aye vote.
Okay, we're voting on second reading amendment number 1, the Senate File 60. The ayes and noes have been called. The chief clerk will call the roll.
Roll call vote, second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 60. Anderson? No. No. Barlow? No. No. Boner? Aye. Aye. Brennan? No. No. Case? No. No. Cooper? Aye. Aye. Crago? No. No. Crum? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll excused. French? Aye. Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Aye. Ide? Aye. Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Aye. Landon? No. No. Larson? Aye. Aye. McEwen? Aye. Aye. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. No. Pappas? No. No. Pearson? Aye. Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Aye. Smith? No. No. Steinmetz? Aye. Aye. President Beitman?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On the amendment, 16 aye, 14 no, 1 excused.
Second reading amendment number 1, the Senate File 60 has been adopted. Senate File 60 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 81, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 81, tax exemption, property owned by the state.
Senate File 81 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Oh, you have an objection? Oh, I'm sorry. Senator McEwen, or Senator French?
I request to lay back Senate File 81, absent objection.
Hearing no objection, Senate File 81 has been laid back a day, but I might have already pushed it through, so. Senator Case, what are your thoughts?
Well, you did already send it down the pipe. We still have time. It could be late, we could make a point of laying it back on the third reading to give the gentleman additional time. And I think because unless we want to replay that, which we could do, but
I think
we might just leave it in second and then immediately make note of it in the third reading to lay it back, if necessary.
Yeah, I think since I've already put it through, we'll just make a note to lay it back a day on third. Senator McEwen, is that okay with you? French, sorry. All right, moving along. Senate File 95, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 95, Special Purpose Depository Institution Amendments.
Senate File 95 having been read 2 separate times. Question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. And the interns are here. Members of the Senate, each year the Wyoming Legislature sponsors the Legislative Internship Program, providing high school students and college students with a unique insight into the legislative branch of government and its crucial role in creating public policy. Our 2 high school interns will complete their internships today and would like to share a few thoughts on their experience with you. Senators, please join me in welcoming Casey Toner, a senior at Glen Rock High School, and Presley Bray, a homeschool student from Cody, to share a few words. Casey?
Thank you, Mr. President, excuse me. That's a good way to start a speech, isn't it? Today's kind of a bittersweet moment as my last and second term as a high school intern. Serving in this capacity has been more than just a role. It's been a privilege and an opportunity to get a front row seat to the legislative process and just to watch some of the most dedicated individuals in the state lead and commit to our state. And I've witnessed firsthand your commitment to Wyoming's future. I'd like to start with a few thanks. I'm incredibly grateful to the Legislative Service Office for trusting me with this opportunity and mentoring me along the way. I don't know if Dick made it down here, but Mr. Dick Keene is our mentor, and is he above me? He has really helped through this process and shared more history about both his time working around the state, and I just learned more history from him than I will ever learn anywhere else. Your leadership and guidance has left a lasting impact on how I view governance and advocacy. And to my colleagues, fellow interns, and the many staff members who make the Wyoming Legislature turn seamlessly, thank you for inspiring me every single day. Your hard work, patience, and expertise have been invaluable to my experience here. To the lady I call my legislative grandmother, Miss Sandy Dent, there in the back, thank you for being a guiding light through the often complex and fast-paced world of the legislature. Your wisdom, humor, and steadfast support have not only made this experience enjoyable, but has also taught me the value of patience and perspective. You've been a mentor, family, and a source of constant encouragement. I'll carry the lessons you shared with me throughout my life and career. Additionally, a heartfelt thank you to my adopted family who's taken care of me through this week. Hotels are expensive, as I'm sure most of you have learned. So these Ty, Cade, and Becky Harris have taken great care of me through this time. And just being my family away from home. Reflecting on these past few weeks, I'm kind of reminded as to why I got into public service in the first place. Growing up in Wyoming, I've seen how decisions made here in this chamber directly impact our neighbors, our schools, and our industries. This internship reaffirmed my belief in the importance of representing the voices of all Wyomingites. These chambers remind me that the people and the work that we do here are not about just drafting bills or passing resolutions. It's about the people, their stories, their struggles, and their dreams. These moments have fueled my passion for public service and my commitment to making a difference, no matter how big or small. As I move forward, I carry with me not just the skills I've developed, but the lessons I've learned about collaboration, resilience, and the power of listening. I've learned that real change requires more than just ideas. It demands teamwork, respect for diverse perspectives, and a willingness to compromise. These are lessons I take with me into every future endeavor, whether in public service, education, or beyond. Though I'm stepping away from my role as an intern, my commitment to Wyoming remains steadfast. I leave here not with a goodbye, but a promise to continue working for a brighter future for our state, advocating for the principles that matter most to me, and carrying the spirit of public service wherever I go. Thank you all for your support, your encouragement, and I'm deeply honored to have watched the legislative process, and I look forward for the day our paths cross again. Now, before I leave, I have kind of a special thing I'd like to do. So Senator Boner and our Sergeant at Arms, if you please both step up here. So I have been in Washington, D.C. a time or two, and I've made some really good connections in the Pentagon, the Capitol, and the White House. Senator Boner, you've been nothing short of a mentor and a teacher. You've taught me everything I know about the legislative process and public policy. And Dick, you've taught me more about this building than I could have ever asked for. I mean, I have gone on more tours with you than anyone else. So these flags have been honorably flown above the Pentagon, the White House, and the Capitol to thank you for not only your service to our country, but your service and your continued service to the state. So I've got one of these for both of you. So finally, God bless these chambers, God bless this state, God bless every one of you while navigating the future of our state in the coming months. Thank you. That's it, I promise.
All right, Presley Bray, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Morning, Senators. As you know, I'm Presley Bray, a homeschooled junior in high school from up in Cody. I was made aware of this opportunity to be an intern by Representative Rachel Rodriguez-Williams, and I am very grateful to her for making me aware of this. I'm grateful to all of y'all for allowing us to have such a program as high school interns. That's not available in all states, and it's very cool to be here and be able to make connections and learn by being immersed in Capitol life as a high schooler for 2 weeks. I also want to thank Representative Haraldson. He got me in touch with where I'm staying, and the Nichols, Mr. Brent and Miss Cheryl, because they have opened their home to me. I want to thank all of the people who offered to let me stay, like Miss Sherry Steinmetz and Senator Hutchings and Senator French, offering to see if I could maybe carpool down, or rather caravan down, and stay safe on the roads. I have also been adopted by Miss Sadie Dent. She is now my legislative grandmother. She had been instrumental in keeping my safety first. Like last Friday when I was headed over the mountain to Laramie with snow coming in, she got me out of here early, along with Miss Rihanna Davidson and Mr. Dick Keene, who have been, as well as keeping me safe, been amazing mentors in teaching me through this process. I am actually aspiring to a career in music performance, so if y'all don't mind, I'll leave you with a song. The song, How Can I Keep From Singing, is an old Gaelic hymn that is very reflective of me and my life. My life goes on in endless song, above earth's lamentations, I hear the trumpet sounding strong, that heralds a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear its music ringing. It ever echoes in my life. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to this rock I'm clinging. How could I ever come to harm? How can I keep from singing? Then sings my soul with love profound, a fountain ever springing. Deep from the earth, how sweet the sound. How can I keep from singing?
What a blessing that was from both of you. We are so grateful. I still have goosebumps. I don't know about you guys. That was great. Wow, Casey Presley, thank you. Here's some certificates of our appreciation to you. And hopefully you'll remember your time with us fondly, and you'll come back and visit us here at the Wyoming Senate anytime. You guys are always welcome. One more round of applause for Casey and Presley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could I just have a little point of privilege?
Absolutely.
Mr. President, I was thinking about the situation that just happened on second reading, and the gentleman was standing. But I would hope with your indulgence and the floor, it's not always possible for the presiding officer who's ever in the chair to see someone standing. And I've always thought, and I think it's pretty much our custom, that you can say the name of the chair, or Mr. President, or Mr. Chairman, if you're trying to get their attention and before an action happens from the chair. We've always been good about that, and it's very difficult from where you sit, because everything kind of blends together. So maybe that would help everybody to feel a little bit more confident to just, say, Mr. President, before you actually commit the words. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Case, and that's a great point. And also, if you can catch me beforehand, if you want to lay something back too, that helps me write it down on my sheet so I don't miss you, but I apologize. Okay. We are on the business of third reading and final passage. Madam Majority Floor Leader, do we have a consent list?
Mr. President, I move the consent list, which is as follows. Senate File 3, mule and white-tailed deer separate hunting seasons. Senate File 8, protection orders effective during appeal or review. Senate File 26, protection of military equipment. Senate File 28, ROTC endowment program. Senate File 34, school finance routine and major maintenance calculations. Senate File 63, State Lands Fencing 2, Senate File 80, Abandonment of Water Rights Limitations.
Okay. Would anybody like any of these removed from the consent list? Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I'd like to remove Senate File 26, Protection of Military Equipment. There was a question asked on second reading, and we have an answer. I'd like to answer that for the good senator from Fremont County.
Okay. Senate File 26, Protection of Military Equipment, has been removed from the consent list. Senator Landon.
Senate File 3, please, Mr. President.
Senate File 3, mule and white-tailed deer separate hunting seasons, has been removed from the consent list. Okay. Any more? Okay. Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? Senate File 8, protection orders effective during appeal or review. Senate File 28, ROTC endowment program. Senate File 34, school finance routine and major maintenance calculations. Senate File 63, state lands fencing 2. And Senate File 80, abandonment of water rights limitation. The reading clerk will call the roll, or the chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call on the consent list. Anderson? Barlow? Boner? Brennan? Case? Cooper? Craigo? Crum? Dockstetter? Driscoll excused. French? Guru? Hicks? Hutchings? Ide? Jones? Kolb? Landon? Larson? McEwen? Nethercott? Olson? Pappas? Pearson? Rothfuss? Salazar? Schuler? Scott? Smith? Steinmetz? President Beitman?
Aye.
On the consent list, 30 aye, 1 excused. Senate File 8, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 8, 30 aye, 1 excused. Senate File 28, are there any changes? Aye. Aye to no. Larson? Aye to no. French? Aye to no. Case? Aye to no. Kolb? Aye to no. McEwen? Aye to no. Hutchings? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 28, 23 aye, 7 no, 1 excused. Senate File 34, are there any changes? Aye. Aye to no. Smith? Aye to no. Boner? Aye to no. Pearson? Aye to no. Kolb? Aye to no. Steinmetz? Aye to no. French? Aye to no. McEwen? Aye to no. Hutchings? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 34, 21 aye, 9 no, 1 excused. Senate File 63, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 63, 30 aye, 1 excused. And lastly, Senate File 80, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Brew? Aye to no. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 80, 29 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 8, protection orders effective during appeal or review, Senate File 28, ROTC endowment program, Senate File 34, school finance, routine and major maintenance calculations, Senate File 63, state lands fencing 2, and Senate File 80, abandonment of water rights limitations, have passed the Senate. Bills on third reading. Let's see here. Looks like Senate File 2, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 2, Hunting Licenses Weighted Bonus Point System, sponsored by the Travel Committee, an act relating to game and fish.
There is an amendment. Will the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
Senate File 2, third reading amendment number 1, delete.
Mr. President, I'm going to ask, absent any objections, that Senate File 2 be laid back for one more day. I want to work with the sponsor of the amendment to clarify what I think is a technical correction and maybe some other issues there. So bar any objection, I would ask that it be laid back.
Senator Case?
Mr. President, I would object to the sense that I don't mind the bill being laid back, but if there's something, I'd like to propose this concept here today, and you can lay it back afterwards and tell me what's wrong with the amendment, and I'm okay with that.
Well, Senator Hicks, you want to make a motion to lay it back, or do you want to, what do you want to do, sir?
Mr. President, I move to lay Senate File 2 back for one more day.
Okay. Discussion on the motion? Is it a voice vote or a roll call vote? Voice vote? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion is carried. Senate File 2 has been laid back for one day. Senate File 3, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 3, Mule and Whitetail Deer Separate Hunting Season, sponsored by the Travel Committee, an act relating to game and fish.
Is there discussion? Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. I asked Senate File 3 be pulled off the consent list. Not to belabor this bill, we had a good debate as it came through the process. In addition to that, great deference to the prime advocate of the bill who is not here today, so I don't want to carry on too long, but I do want to rise and represent what I think is quite a majority out there, Mr. President. There really hasn't been any of the surveys taken where more than 50% of those surveyed approved of this bill. Up in the neck of the woods that we spent a lot of time talking about up in the northeast part of the state, 2 out of every 3 ranchers that were surveyed, over 700 in the survey, 2 out of 3 said they really don't want this bill. Management doesn't lobby us, but if you corner folks who work in the field out there, you probably won't find anybody who says they need this bill, and the reason is they've got all the tools necessary to take care of the deer populations in Wyoming. They're doing it now. And everything that is purported to be done in this bill is already being done. There's a reason why the mule deer are coming back. There's a reason why we're getting some control on the whitetail populations. Mr. President, in all my years down here, I have come to find that when bills are proposed that are really not needed, there's almost always an unintended consequence. That's the way I'm feeling about this one. I told you about a perception out there, and I think I reflect a lot of sportsmen when I say they think they're going to have to buy 2 licenses now, and they think that somehow this is going to benefit landowners. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's what the perception is. Mr. President, I'm going to be a no on this bill, even though I'm the chairman of the committee that it comes out of. I just don't think the bill is needed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Senator Crum.
Mr. Chairman, I'm also going to be a no on this bill. I've gone out since this bill was introduced and visited with our largest sporting goods stores in my community. They don't want the bill. I visited with Avid Hunters. I visited with the chairman of the big, I can't say the name of the organization, big organization, foundation that protects wildlife. They're against it. I've talked to a bunch of fanatics that belong to another organization. They're against it. There's nobody in our community that's for it. There's also the fear that like outfitters will charge, if you have a whitetail license, they'll charge you a fee. Then you got a mule deer license, they'll charge you a fee. And I didn't find anybody that was in favor of this bill in my community. So I'll be against it.
Thank you, Senator Crum. Anybody else? Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, I'm also going to be a no. I talked to my sportsmen and landowners, and I didn't find anybody in favor of this. In fact, I found some that were radically against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm also going to be a no. I received some email in addition to from sportsmen, from scientists, talking about the management side of things and concerns about the challenges it'll present from a management standpoint.
Anybody else for the first time? Nope. Senator Hicks?
Mr. President, I feel compelled, not that I have a strong opinion on this bill, but to at least represent the member of the body that's not here. And I just want to remind everybody that when we pass statutes, it has statewide implications. We don't write them for this corner of the state or that corner of the state. And so what you find on a number of cases, based on geography and certain issues, there may be regional areas that really like something and somebody else doesn't. But I would just remind you of the fact that when we talk about one corner doesn't like something, we don't write laws for that. They apply to the entire state of Wyoming. But I do want to, and I think that my colleague, the chairman, the numbers he gave you are absolutely accurate, but those are regional numbers. I just keep coming back to this survey that was conducted by the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Completely statistical valid survey, and statewide, they surveyed a little over 37,000 identified deer hunters. 45% supported this bill, 25% opposed. 30 didn't have an opinion. So while there wasn't a clear majority of 50+1%, there was a significant, almost double supporting the bill that were opposed to the bill. The vast 30% were, let's say, ambivalent. And so, Mr. President, I'm not taking a position one way or another, again, just trying to represent my colleague that's not present on the floor and just reintroduce that information that was presented to us by the department.
Senator Rothfuss for your second time.
Mr. President, without objection, I'd ask that this bill be laid back for, I believe, one additional day. I do think it looks like it's in trouble at this point in time, and I don't want the bill to go down without my colleague being here to defend it. I don't think that's appropriate for the Senate. So I'd ask for it to be laid back. I believe one additional day. I'm going to look around and make sure that's the right number. Do we expect good senator to be back in one day?
I believe he will be back Monday. So.
Well, yeah, one additional business day, exactly. So until Monday. I'd ask that it be laid back without objection.
Senator Landon?
Mr. President, not that we need to go further than that, because that's exactly, I just wanted to tip my hat to the senator from Albany County. I think that would be appropriate. In no way did I want to cast too big a shadow on the good man from the Devil's Tower area. And let's let him get back and we'll have another little quick debate. I think that would be very appropriate. Thanks to the senator.
So absent objection, Senate File 3 will be laid back one day. That was a classy move, thank you. Senate File 26, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 26, Protection of Military Equipment, sponsored by the Transportation Committee, an act relating to crimes and offenses.
Discussion, Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the work of the good chairman of transportation and some of the questions we had. Just want to follow up a little bit before we voted. So we're talking about these state security officers. These are fully trained security forces airmen who are traditional guardsmen. So think the, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, but they also have this full-time job as a state security officer doing the exact same duties that they're doing in the exact same unit on a part-time basis. So there's members on this floor who are far more familiar with all the different hats you can wear as a member of the National Guard, but within the Security Forces Squadron, there's federal technicians, active Guard and Reserve, and federally reimbursed state employees that we're talking about here. So same people, exact same people, wearing different hats, different statuses, depending on what day of the week or month it is. This simply gives them the same protections consistently when they're doing these duties, securing critical assets for the Wyoming Military Department. So hope that clears it up. Sorry for the confusion, but that just got a little bit of information. I'll certainly be ready to answer any more questions we may have.
Thank you, Senator Boner. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, just to take that one step further, these people who are traditional guardsmen typically are on Title 32 status. These people, when they are activated, say they are deployed and put in Title 10 status, they do have immunity. So these people do have immunity for those very few times that they're in status. However, when they're not in status, they're not working as a guardsman, their full-time job is a state employee. And so they're doing the same exact work as the good senator said. They're just not able to have the same immunity they are when they are in status. So, but they're fully trained, as he mentioned. And we need to provide them that ability because they have to do the job of protecting critical assets. It's required by law that they use deadly force. And so we're just wanting to extend immunity to them.
Thank you, Senator. Any further discussion? Question being called. Senate File 26, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call, Senate File 26. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll excused. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 26, 30 aye, 1 excused.
Senate File 26, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected to the Senate, Senate File 26 has passed the Senate. Madam Majority Floor Leader, we're on that order of business of consideration of bills on general file.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carried. Senator Anderson, come on down.
Don't get it.
Well, thank you. Go ahead and keep clapping. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Enough. Enough. Uh-oh. Oh, tricky. The committee of the whole will please come to order. First bill for our consideration is Senate File 74. Would the reading clerk please read the bill?
Senate File 74, Immunity for Drug Overdose Reporting, an act relating to controlled substances sponsored by the Labor Committee. Was referred to Committee Number 10, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Barlow, Crum, Scott, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Hutchings. Senator Barlow, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Barlow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Committee of the Whole rises to report and do so if it do pass on Senate File 74, and I turn the explanation of the bill over to Senator Crum. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Crum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a really good bill for our folks in our counties and our cities and within the state of Wyoming. What this bill does is it allows for mistakes to happen. If a person overdoses and they're in the need of emergency medical care, it allows someone to call to help them to save their life without being prosecuted for participating with them in whatever party or thing that they were doing. They get immunity from that. And what it does is help protect people, especially young people, college students, high school students, young people that are doing stupid things that maybe we all did or thought about doing when we were kids. It really protects them. And this doesn't let drug dealers off the hook. If somebody is dealing in drugs or peddling drugs, this bill does not exempt those folks from prosecution. This just would exempt, in layman's term, the other party goers. In my community, I have a dear, dear friend whose son was up at the university at a frat party and took some stuff and drank some stuff and ended up dying on his vomit because people in the room were afraid to call for help, that they would be in trouble too. So they left him on a couch and he died in his vomit, and he could have very easily been saved if somebody would have called for help. And this bill allows for that to take place. This bill does put limitations on how many times you can do it. You can be, in better words, you can be stupid twice a year. You know, you can have a mistake twice a year. Maybe you're a student at the university, you do something not so good in the spring, and maybe you do it again in the fall, 2 different school years. It allows twice a year for mistakes. It doesn't allow you to be a habitual, I'm calling every weekend because I had a problem. Those folks need to get some other professional help. But it does allow those kind of one-off type things to take place. So I would strongly encourage a vote in favor of this bill. It will save lives in this state, and it'll protect people that need protected. So I do appreciate your time. I do know there's an amendment that will be introduced later.
There is an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read that amendment in now?
Senate File 74, Committee of the Whole Amendment Number 1, page 4, line 1, delete.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendments Number 1 to Senate File 74 and ask for your favorable consideration. I'd like to kind of explain my no vote on this, and it's basically because of what the good bringer of the bill said. If you look on page 4, line 1, the way he explained it in the committee was you get 2 different school years to make a mistake. And in my eyes, this is not a mistake. If you get 2 different school years, you could potentially do this every year. Your freshman, your sophomore, your junior, and your senior year, and get immunity every semester if you timed it right. I believe in personal responsibility, and what better place than at our community colleges and university for this to start taking place. Future doctors, lawyers, and teachers, etc., should be making better decisions not trying to get immunity for their illegal activities. By giving people immunity over and over again, we are setting up a precedent that could end up with us having addicted doctors, lawyers, and teachers. So I'm asking, Mr. Chair, on my amendment that we move this down to one time in 12 months instead of 2. And that's pretty much the gist of my amendment and my explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on amendment number 1? Senator Brennan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just have a little bit of an understanding on what the discussion was. It looks like this is a interim bill, so if somebody who was on the committee over the summer could tell me some of that discussion or what discussion you have recently had on why it was set at the 2 times limit to begin with, I would appreciate that. Yeah, that's part of the amendment.
Senator Hutchings, do you want to answer
Well, if
it?
he was in committee, he can. Oh, should we pile him up? Okay.
Senator Rothfuss, if you'd like to answer that.
No, Mr. Chairman, I was just piling on a few questions so that when it got back, they could be answered all at once.
Okay.
Yeah. But around the discussion on the amendment of one time, as I understand it, this is one time basically for the caller to be immune or anybody that's providing the service, not necessarily the individual being revived. Both, as I potentially understand it. Here's what I'm envisioning, though. Even with the 2-time limit, but exacerbated by changing it to a 1-time limit, you have a situation where somebody, for their first experience, ends up having an accidental overdose. And these can be accidental, too. That's an important thing to realize. Somebody can be taking something that they think is perfectly legitimate, and it turns out to be laced with fentanyl, and at that point in time, they're on the floor, and they're not long from death. So we'll say that that person is suffering in that situation accidentally entirely. But now I'm somebody in the room, and earlier this year, maybe, Mr. Chairman, I had the same problem, or maybe I had it 2 times this year, and I'm thinking, well, I'm already at my 2 count. So I'm probably just gonna go ahead and leave. And that defies the spirit of this legislation, which is really to make sure that that person who is about to die on the ground, right, where I know this chamber really believes in life, believes in trying to preserve life, the idea that we would have someone walk away because their phone call count exceeded the maximum number in a 12-month period is disturbing. So I have concerns even at the 2 level, but changing it back to 1, to me, just seems like we're going to end up with some deaths of Wyoming citizens that could have been avoided with a simple phone call, and that has me concerned, Mr. Chairman.
Further discussion, Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On for the amendment. I think we run a risk of basically being in league with people doing drugs and doing dangerous things, or condoning it. We got to draw the line somewhere about what we're doing. We don't want to encourage it, because obviously an endless number of people calling the law enforcement folks, and it could be for legitimate or nefarious reasons, it could be. I mean, they could be doing it to cover up getting caught. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen here, but I do appreciate the intent of the bill, the bringer of it, and I do appreciate the bringer of the amendment. I think it does cut a balance here. We don't want to encourage it, but we want to try to help folks when a legitimate need arises that's not an abuse of the system or the law. And I think this amendment intends to do that, and I support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, on and against the amendment. Mr. Chairman, first let me make it clear that what we're talking about with the 2 times limitation is as to whether the person who is experiencing the overdose gets prosecuted. There's no limitation on the number of times somebody can call that's a bystander. We don't want to limit that, because that's, in a really serious case, that's who it's likely to be, is a bystander, and you want them to be able to call without them getting prosecuted. But if the number of times that somebody who experienced the overdose should be exempt from prosecution, that's, I think, subject to reasonable debate, and we can all reasonably differ on that. I thought the 2 times was appropriate, and if somebody had overdosed more than twice, it's an indication that they need a degree of help that they're not getting. And that, frankly, sometimes a prosecution is what's needed so that those people don't have any choice about getting help and getting their problem that's causing the overdose solved. I think, Mr. Chairman, we'd be better not to take it to once. You could take it 3, you can take it to 1. It'll still be, Mr. Chairman, a relatively effective bill, but I think 2 is the right number on this limitation. So I would urge us to defeat this amendment.
Anyone else on the amendment? On the amendment? Senator Crum.
Mr. Chairman, just to confirm what Senator Scott said, he is correct that this 2 times has to do with the person that is overdosed, not the person making the phone call. So it's for the person that overdosed. 2 times, kind of the standard, 3 strikes, you're out. So this is strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, you're out, you're going to jail for doing it. So 2 strikes, you're out type thing. And then the other one, Senator Scott is also correct that the person making the phone call, as long as they're not the drug dealer and those type of things, they're immune. They can make 1,000 phone calls a year to save lives. This bill will save lives.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and members of the body, it seems to me that the way this is structured, it's again, it's 2 times in 1 month, in 1 year. And so if you've had 2 times in 1 year, you probably got a drug addiction problem. And sometimes the remediation for drug addiction is the prosecution, because you get them away from the drugs and you have the ability to bring them into court. We've got diversions and other options that can be looked at. So when I look at this, it seems to me if the intent is really to get people in and get them treated, we wouldn't want to continue to give them, everybody can make a mistake. Second time becomes a pattern. You got 12 months. It seems to me the one time, it's the one time get out a free jail card. The next time you're a habitual drug user, got a problem, and we need some intervention, and just letting them out again free with no opportunity for the courts to be involved in a decision on how we treat those people, or if there's diversion programs, or have a discussion, or get them to the right places for treatment. I think just expounds and compounds the problem that we're trying to address. So on and for the amendment.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment. I struggled with this part in committee as well. I think it's a good bill if we clamp it down just a little bit to where we're not enabling this kind of activity. Rather, we're giving grace one time, but not enabling. So on and for the amendment.
Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I wasn't going to rise on this one, but on and against the amendment. Senators, I've spent the last 2 years on our Judiciary Committee, and I've got some bad news to report to you. We have an epidemic going on out there. It's a drug and alcohol abuse problem that we wrestled with in committee, and you may have heard along the way that we've been looking at treatment programs and diversion programs, and we're looking at any way possible that we can keep these folks out of the correction system, out of the courts. These are revolving door kinds of cases. And regardless really on this count of what we do, I'm sorry, but they're coming back. They're going to come back to us. And they're either going to come back in an incarcerated way that costs us a great deal of money, or we're going to try to stand these treatment and diversion programs up, and our communities are working on it, and we can try to get access to them and help them get away from their addictions. All this is going to do, folks, unfortunately, we're not going to correct anything. This is all about just saving a life, so that maybe one of our counseling centers or our treatment programs or our nonprofits can get to these people and get them some help. I think really one of the last things we want to do is put them in the correction system, put them in the court system. That's what we've been working hard to try to get a handle on, folks. And you know, we're overloaded in the jails, we're overloaded in the court dockets. So on and against the amendment. Thank you.
Other discussions? Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to provide a different perspective for those of you that want to curb the practice and not want to enable behavior of how this bill could be used. One, I support the bill. I support the 2 times because I think it's more consistent with how drug addicts and drug users behave. And so from a practical on-the-ground street application, I think it's prudent to have the 2 times. Without this type of protection, law enforcement, medical services aren't called, and the overdose victim dies. Everyone abandons the body, cleans the scene, and runs. And so now you're investigating a homicide or a potential homicide or just an overdose death, depending on the circumstances of that situation. And there have been people convicted of homicide for giving lethal narcotics to users in this state and at the federal level. But now you have the opportunity for law enforcement to get in contact with these individuals who are not running and who potentially are sober at the time while they're receiving medical treatment. And they can do a solid interview of sources and have different conversations other than just the use or possession of these controlled substances. So I do think it helps to curb illegal drug activity in the state while protecting those addicted to these drugs. I think the 2 times does at first blush seem a lot and seems potentially that you could be enabling it, but I also think the inability to recognize the 2-time disregards the seriousness of the situation on the ground for these types of users that find themselves in these types of situations, that death is a likelihood, including fentanyl and the ease of death with that particular drug. So I'm on and against the amendment and for the bill.
Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also on and against the amendment, and still curious how 2 times was, but we at least need that 2 times in there. If you have somebody who overdoses, time is of the essence. And if you say, hey, you can't call 911 and get me help because I might go to jail on a second time, I'm just concerned that we're going to be losing lives that we don't want to lose. So on and against the amendment.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll try to address a little bit of the why a 2-time. And if you'll go back up to me on page 3, this is to the point of the amendment, which is striking 1 or 2, putting in 1, but to get to that, I have to go back into the bill just a little bit. If you take a look at line 16, 17, this is possession of a controlled substance in our current statute under that same title, under this particular offense. This is a misdemeanor, but it changes on the 3rd offense. The fines and the jail time change on the 3rd offense. So that's why 2 was chosen as the first 2, you're at that low misdemeanor level, if you will. It's not how it's described in the statute, Mr. Chairman, but then when you get to a 3rd or subsequent one, you're at a much higher level. It doesn't become a felony yet because it's the volume of the drug that determines that, but there are higher fines and potential for more jail time. So I think that is the context or the nexus to the first two times because of the level of the infraction or the jail and the second one, if you look at 19 and 20, it's a misdemeanor. It's actually lower time and money misdemeanor than the possession one, the use one. And so, but there is no third time, et cetera, on that one. So I hope that maybe explains a little bit of the 2 versus 1. I'm against the amendment, for the bill, and hopefully that helps explain the 2 versus 1. Thank you.
Senator Hutchings, are you ready to bring us home on this amendment, please?
We can try, Mr. Chairman, I'll do my best. The good senator answered the number question, but I'm still in doubt. Based on the good senator from Laramie's scenario, it's always about fear. And I think when we get to the stage when we're in college and we're at a university, we need to get out of that. The young people being afraid to do things nowadays, it just amazes me. If I see someone in need, the Good Samaritan law takes place. If you're not involved in dealing with drugs and you see someone who's hurt, you're not gonna run and, run away from a person that's in need. Hopefully you'll stop and you'll help them out. Let me see. In my eyes, if you're doing no wrong, you have no fear of the law. Let me see what else we were talking about. The judiciary system. Again, all fine and good, but it seems to me that we're continually capitulating to people's mistakes and not letting people be responsible for their actions. I've known since I was a kid, don't take drugs, they're bad. Alcohol is bad. So if we get to the state where we're in college and we're taking drugs and we're drinking and we run into a scenario like this, it's my responsibility. So for that, Mr. Chair, again, I ask that you would consider this amendment favorably. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hutchings. Sensing the body's ready to vote, all those in favor of Senator Hutchings' motion to adopt Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to Senate File 74, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no? No. I think that amendment failed, but I'm in doubt. Could all in favor please stand? All opposed, please stand. Oh, gee. The amendment has failed. Thank you. Back on the bill. Any more discussion on the bill? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a little more discussion. There was an interesting discussion, and I think a lot of focus is put on our institutions of higher learning. This is where this occurs. But I think many of you know that the challenges we're having with fentanyl, with opioids, et cetera, it's in all of our communities. The smallest communities, the largest communities. It permeates so many places. So I think that while we can focus on those young folks, there are a lot of other folks that are struggling and having other challenges in their lives, different challenges than a college student, which may be inexperience or behavior that's experimental. Other folks have different challenges and sometimes turn to the wrong things to find maybe relief or something from them. So this applies everywhere. And I want to be clear on what we had an amendment that talked about the 2 times. But if you take a look at the second sentence in that subsection, the limitations of the 2 that now stays within the bill does not apply for the person if they are seeking help for themselves or another person. So there is no limitation on that. This only applies to someone who is found in a state and that is reported, then they only have the 2. But anyone else that does this, there is no limitation in this law. So I hope that helps clarify that 1 versus 2. Maybe I should have said that in the other one, but there's two sentences in that subsection, and I'm sorry, maybe they could read a little better, a little differently, so it's more clear. But there is no limitation if you seek medical assistance for yourself or someone else. No limitation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other discussion, Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whether I agree with the intent of the bill. However, I think we run a risk of being an enabler. And I think that if we're going to talk about actually helping people, I don't know why we're not talking about drug treatment. I don't know why we're not doing something about that. I think that to allow people to continually, make these bad choices and end up in our jails or wherever they might end up without having the ability of letting these folks get treatment, I think would be something that I would certainly like to see in this bill. I don't want to continue to help people do things that are bad and then giving them a way out because we're trying to help a person who, mistakenly maybe took fentanyl. It was obviously probably not their intent to try to, kill themselves, but it ended up being that way. So I think if we're going to talk about helping people, in my mind, for me, I think it has to be part and parcel with drug treatment. I will not support a bill without some sort of ability for that avenue to happen, to help these people, because that's true help in this scenario. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hutchings, I think you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to thank the associated students from the university for a nice letter, and they also gave us in committee a handout with lots of statistics in it. And one of them that I can be really happy about, Mr. Chairman, was that when polled, the majority of the students, over 60%, said that they've never been in a situation like this in the first place. It was just a few of them. But having said that, I agree with the previous speaker that I'm on and against this bill. Thank you.
Senator Brennan, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill is about helping people. This bill is about helping people, and maybe they've done something wrong, but maybe it's a one-time experiment with a drug. When we take something such as, we'll talk about fentanyl because that's the one that's used right now. You get too much of those, and they depress your system. And then you stop breathing. Then you don't get oxygen to your brain, and you become brain dead. And then I end up taking care of you, and I have to tell your family that you're not going to come back. And if we have people who are afraid to call soon enough, that is the reality of what happens. The other thing that I think is important for the body to know is that we don't know the doses. People who are taking these, and maybe for the first time experimenting with a drug, they don't know the doses that they're taking. Another newer thing that's come up in the last few years is that these drugs are being laced with horse tranquilizers. You can't reverse that with something that's out on the street. You have to get immediate mechanical help with ventilation in order to save the person from brain death. This bill is about saving lives, and I urge us to support and pass this bill.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On for the bill as well. This has proven to be effective. It's not just speculation. Wyoming is literally the last state to contemplate these laws. All the rest have passed it, and extensive studies have indicated that this is effective. In fact, those studies indicate that it reduces accidental overdoses by 15%, right? That's about 1 in 6. Just imagine that. 1 in 6. This is a policy that if you have 6 imminent deaths available. We have the opportunity to stop one of them. That's amazing. There aren't a lot of other things that we do in here where we have the potential to make that much of a difference. This is real. And this idea that we need to judge and categorize and separate, well, this class of person we should respond to. And they've done things good enough in life, we've judged them. We think they're good enough for us to save their life. But this other class, well, they're druggies, they're drug users. We don't somehow care about them and we don't want to save their life. You know, I take exception to that. Every single person in the state of Wyoming that finds themselves in an overdose situation, I want that person to live. I want them to have another chance. It might be a hard life for them. They might be heavily addicted. They might need the treatment that my good friend was referring to earlier. But without this, they don't get that chance. They don't get a chance to find the help they need. We see this at our schools, we see this at our universities. It's a big problem. It's something which is an incredible priority for our students, but it's not just about our students at the university. All people, all walks of life, all of our communities, all of our constituents could find themselves in this type of situation regardless of what personal responsibility they have. And the idea that most people haven't had the opportunity to do this and that most people haven't seen anyone OD, it's kind of a little manipulation of statistics. The other side of that is about 20% of students that have used drugs have walked away from somebody that has experienced overdose. 1 in 5, right? That's the other side of that statistic. That's incredibly significant. Why did they leave? Was it because they didn't care? No, it was because they were afraid and they didn't want to get in trouble. We need this mechanism. We need to make it absolutely clear to our students, but to everybody else in the state, that if they see someone in an emergency that's overdosing, that needs our help, that we will show up to help them, and that they won't be in trouble for saving that person's life. That's the decision we're making here. This is an exceptional bill. This may be the most important bill we passed this year.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, neither on or for the bill. Just a question when this was brought before the committee, because the way I read the bill, this deals with listed substances for overdose. But was there any discussion about, because we've seen this happen, alcohol overdoses, particularly at some of our educational institutes where they get into these large drinking parties and you have a similar type of circumstance as this. Was that discussed and why was that eliminated or not included, I guess just as an inquiry?
Senator Barlow, would you like to answer that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there was discussion both during the interim, Mr. Chairman, and at our committee meeting, although we didn't get much into our committee meeting. But if you take a look at the two laws that we're talking about, the possession and the controlled substance, they are specific to controlled substances. And alcohol, as you know, in this state, is a regulated substance, is not a controlled substance, if you will. So alcohol certainly can be a contributing factor to an overdose, et cetera, but they are not, it is not intentionally not included, but it is not the focus of this because this immunity that's provided is for class 1, 2, and 3 controlled substances, and alcohol is not included in that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do appreciate the comment about these folks need help. Absolutely, they need help, and I would look forward to a second reading amendment if someone wanted to work on one that would have them be referred to the Community Mental Health Center that the state funds in every community in this state. And I would hope for your support on the budgets that actually fund those programs so that they are in every community in our state, so we can have some of these resources. And then we'll have another opportunity with a drug court bill, so we can have some of these folks that are in the beginning of their struggle, maybe find a way to get them out of that track and into a healthier life and away from the challenges that these drugs might face and death potentially these drugs might be. So there is an opportunity to do what these folks are interested in, give them a referral, a warm handoff or whatever, in the context of what we're talking about right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Barlow. Senator Scott. Mr. Chairman, I do want to respond to the comment that a suggestion we shouldn't ought to vote for this bill because it doesn't deal with the treatment aspect. I would suggest that this bill is independent of that. We do have a treatment system in place. The trouble is that it is not adequate, and it's a personnel issue and it's a funding issue. It's a lack of facilities, particularly residential facilities that are sometimes needed in the treatment of these things. And I would suggest to those that feel that that's a major problem, you still need to vote for this bill because it'll save lives. If the individuals at the undertakers or in the cemetery, it doesn't do them any good if you increase the treatment. But when we get to the budget bill, either the supplemental budget bill this year or the biennial budget bill next year, that may well be the place, Mr. Chairman, where you need to deal with the issue of there isn't enough treatment being done because we don't have enough treatment available.
Thank you. Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Neither for or against the bill at this point. A point of inquiry, though, how many people in the state of Wyoming have been deceased by a drug overdose? Any statistics on that? And I don't know what time period you could, or maybe that's, could come up on second reading, but I would certainly like to know that answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rothfuss, you have an answer for that?
Directly to the question, 472 deaths between 2018 and 2022.
417, is that what you said?
472.
72.
How many years?
472 deaths. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think this is a really good discussion because it kind of helps me frame up what the nature of the problem is. And I know in the past, and I agree with my colleague from Campbell County, if you want to save money and keep them out of the correction systems, you do it through drug courts and intervention early. And I think this body has historically supported that. We maybe need to up the effort. But I'm wondering in the context, and I'm asking a question here, what was the discussion if in case the drug overdose was related to an attempted suicide? What was the discussion there? Do we still just say there are going to be no prosecutions under that scenario? But we just turn them out there? Or what is the kind of intervention when it is a known fact that the reason of the overdose was associated with an attempted suicide? And I'm just curious if that was contemplated or discussed.
Senator Nethercott, would you like to answer that?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just be candid about these situations. When an addict comes in who is needing medical attention, law enforcement doesn't get involved and no one provides really any services because this is a personal responsibility state. So they treat the medical condition and you're released. The government doesn't come in and take over and say, you're a person in need, therefore we're going to put conditions upon you. They arguably haven't violated any law or not a law that law enforcement is in a position to care about. Hospitals also frequently don't call law enforcement just because somebody comes in presenting with an overdose situation. So it's a real independent situation. However, when a number of people come in overdosing on heroin or fentanyl and it is exciting to law enforcement and someone's dying and there's a potential homicide or we're trying to prevent one, that's really the only time law enforcement cares. And again, social services doesn't come knocking. It's just treating the patient with the healthcare needs and getting them out the door.
Thank you. Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the good senator back behind me, just reiterate, yes, when somebody comes in with an overdose in a healthcare system, first priority, we're there, the hospitals are there to take care of the patient, and that's what we do. The second, to answer the question to the senator next to me, I don't know what the discussion was in the interim or if there was discussion, but what I do know is that an overdose from drugs versus an overdose from suicide we usually know the difference just based on the type of drugs or medications that are used. It's usually like a whole bottle of Tylenol or different prescription medications, typically non-opioids prescription medications that patients use for suicidal overdose. So they are kind of separated by the class of medications that are used. Typically, I wouldn't say that's 100%, but typically.
Thank you, Senator Brennan. Other discussion, other discussion, other discussion. Sensing you're ready to vote, all those in favor of Senator Barlow's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 74, I believe it was, say aye. All opposed, same sign? That motion is passed. That Senate File 74 is passed the Committee of the Whole. Before our next bill, Senator Larson, did you want to have privilege of the floor? Oh, would you like a microphone also?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like a privilege of information if I could.
Yes.
Being I'm on a Senate Appropriations Committee, I wanted to explain where the current procedural condition of this bill is.
Now, which bill are you talking about? That we changed to Senate File 10.
I'm sorry.
Are you? Oh, okay. Okay. Senator Landon.
Mr. Chairman, may I have privilege of the floor, please?
Certainly.
Mr. Chairman, out behind the glass is someone that I hope might step up for just a minute. I'd like for all of you to help me welcome back to the Senate one of our former presidents and a longtime member of the Wyoming State Senate. Phil Nicholas is here.
And a fine president he was.
Mr. Chairman, maybe there might be a microphone real quick. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know about giving him a microphone. I've seen him in action. Go ahead, Senator.
It is a dangerous thing to give a lawyer and a former legislator a microphone. You know, I love this place. I love the institution. It's always good to be back here. And political views change and you fight it out here. There are some things that don't change. Charlie can't figure out how to use the computer and he's got his paper. But the good news is I just listened to Charlie and his cognitive ability is still strong. And I'm like, I hope I'm that aware when I get to reach Charlie's age. But I tell you what, I'd be lying if I said I don't want to be here, because I'd love to be here. But life moves on and you do other things, and congratulations to all of you guys being here. And I love that you're here. I wish I was here, and I'm doing other things that I love doing. And I'm a little bit disappointed that Senator Salazar didn't give Gary Crum my seat, because he should be there. And we're pretty proud to have Gary here representing us in my old seat, but I wish I was here, and you're doing great work, and it's a great institution. Thank you.
We're really glad to see you. Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Nethercott.
Mr. Chairman, despite my best efforts to have us do some work this morning, that is just not in the cards. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Committee of the Whole beg leave to rise and sit again.
You've heard the motion, sit and rise again. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Standing committee reports.
Mr. President, the following reports are dated January 24, 2025. Your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 78, Prohibition on Distribution of Unsolicited Ballot Forms, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Boner, Case, Dockstader, Landon, and Steinmetz. Senator Case, Chairman. Mr. President, Committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 62, Restrooms in Publicly Funded Schools 2, respectively reports same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Brennan, Olson, Schuler, and Scott. No, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Thank you, Randy. Madam Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desks. Oops, sorry.
I move that we stand recessed until 2 p.m., Senators, 2 p.m. And we have a lot of work to do this afternoon, Senators, so I'm not sure we'll leave early today.
All right. Are there any announcements? Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 10 will meet at 12:30, room 110, to hear 2 bills, Senate File 71, Ignition Interlock Restricted License, Aggravated Homicide, and Senate File 129, Hospital Employees, Drug and Alcohol Testing. Again, we will convene at 12:30 in room 1W110. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate District, Education, I'm on something else completely, sorry. Education Committee number 4 will meet Monday morning, 8:00 a.m. in W10 and online. We will take a look at 3 bills. The one that we didn't get to today, Senate File 86, Alternative Teaching Certification. Then we'll go to Senate File 109, Open Enrollment within Wyoming Districts. And if we have time, Senate Joint Resolution 3, commemorating Nellie Taylor Ross, if time permits.
Thank you. Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet in W2 upon this noon recess, let's say maybe 12:10. And we're going to hear 4 bills. Senate File 79, District Court Change of Venue. Senate File 107, Freedom to Work and Build Business. Senate File 115, Judicial Review of Agency Actions Limitations. And Senate File 75, Coroner Investigation, Disposition of Decedent's Property. Thank you, Mr.
sir.
President.
Chairman Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivision, will meet Monday morning at 8 a.m. We'll take up Senate File 47, Board of Trustees, Systems of Public Recreation Amendment. We still have a couple of bills on the table that might, we know for sure that we'll be taking up Senate File 111. We'll continue our discussion of net metering revisions. There is a bill, Senate File 87, where we have a working group working on that. It's possible we could hear a report on that, but I kind of doubt it. I think that'll be later in the week. Letting you know.
Thank you. Vice President Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Appropriations Committee meeting will convene at 12:20. Today, we'll be taking up Senate File 17, Carbon Dioxide Enhanced Oil Recovery. Senate File 18, Enhanced Oil Recovery Severance Tax. Senate File 51, Wyoming Telecommunications Act Revisions. Senate File 55, Third-Party Filers. And Senate File 82, Omnibus Water Bill Planning. In room 113. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Anderson.
Mr. President, your Minerals Committee number 9 will meet today upon noon recess at Capitol Extension Room W4 and online to hear 4 bills. Senate File 65, Data Privacy Government Entities. Senate File 83, Large Energy Project Funding Legislation Approval. Senate File 97, Trust Code Revisions. And Senate File 134, Industrial Siting Wildlife Mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Senator McEwen, Chairman McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee number 3 will meet at 12:25 in room number 6 to hear rest of Senate File 96, Wyoming Gold Act. Senate File 128, Repeal of Sales Tax on Electricity. And if time permits, Senate File 68, Government-Owned Lands. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Revenue Committee. Any further announcements? All right, you've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Senate shall stand recessed until 2 p.m.